back to the Real Life Podcast, episode number 26. Emergency was called in this week as the plan I had to record with a certain Geordie who's been on this pod before. You know, you are decided to fall through, shall we
Wait, am
say.
I a
So
backup?
no.
Am I a backup?
So anyway, I decided to go back to the podding style that I'd employed 2 years ago now and go virtual.
Oh God.
And that means that my life tomorrow is going to be ruined by giving me this monster to edit. So if there's a difference in sound quality than normal, this is why, is because we've gone virtual again. So I called upon some reliable help, someone I know I can trust. I called upon the professionalism in my life, the person who's been through the performing ringer, who has high level experience, who's resilient, who will go and become one of the great names in this industry, but then they cancel again. So Verity's
Do you
here.
want to have any more stuff? I can't believe I'm a backup, you little prick. You text me like,
What?
oh, what are you doing tonight? And I was like, oh, I have plans. And you were like, oh, do you want to do a podcast? And I was like, oh, do you know what? Yeah, it's all right. I'll move my plans around you. And now I'm a backup. Wow.
Well, do you want the honest truth of it?
Not really, actually, if I'm a backup.
You are option Charlie.
You are joking. I'm not even option B.
I so I was meant to go and see Drew.
Related to you by blood.
Yeah, but you were in it. This is the thing, right? I was meant to go and see Drew in person yesterday, right? And then
Right.
he cancelled. And
Okay.
then I asked Roddy today, who's coming back up from London today,
Right.
and he's busy. But I just thought, sod it.
Oh, you're like, oh, Verity's got no life.
No, it's only got. I asked the question. This is unnecessary for the pod. Anyway,
Sorry. Hello.
so
It's a
point
delight to
being,
be here, even if I am
yes,
fucking sick.
I am glad you're back. But you join us here from London, do you not today?
I do join you here from London. Yeah, it's a delight to be back. Actually, I listened to our last episode for the first time today while I was in the gym.
Today.
I'd never
See,
listened to it
now I can have a
before.
go at you because you're the fake fan, because that was
N-
literally 6 months
No,
ago
I know,
now.
but I don't like to listen to things with me in it back
Well, yeah, of course, yeah.
because I think that's disgusting. Um, but so I listened back to our episode. I'm quite funny. I was listening to that and I was laughing in the gym. And you know what the problem was? Because I couldn't remember what I said because it was like 6 or 7 months ago.
Mm.
You would say something, and in my head, I'd be like, this would be a really funny joke to say right there. And then previous me said it, and I was like, wow.
Well,
Oh,
you're nothing if
that's
not
brilliant.
modest and consistent,
I would
Verity.
think of the jokes that I then said 6 months ago, tking they were in you.
Well, I'm glad you were pleased.
Yeah, it's also because I've
I'm
got like a
glad you were proud of
goldfish
yourself.
memory. Yeah, very pleased.
Well, good to have confidence in this industry, I think.
You little prick.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
just saying.
yeah, yeah.
So, given that, listen, circumstances aside,
Right.
we're
What, that
we're
I'm
here.
here. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I just mean the nature of my approaching you.
That sounds right.
What do we as a pair, given our childhood, know very well aside from Doctor Who?
Oh, trauma.
I was I was talking about this the other day. I have literally hit the Reece James royal flush in life.
Yeah, I know. You said that on the one that we did as well.
I think I did, yeah. Straight white middle class guy.
Yeah, straight white middle class man. And I
As
said, who can grow a beard? And I'm going to
yes,
add to
exactly.
that, who doesn't have a receding hairline.
God, it's all coming up Millhouse, isn't it?
Wow.
As Reece James says, the first time I saw the word pain, I was in a patisserie.
That's
No,
funny.
what I was getting at is Harry Potter.
I
Um,
know. I just thought I'd
yes,
elaborate.
just for
Yeah.
comedy.
Yeah.
Um, it is at this moment I have to offer a sincere and significant apology to dear friend of the pod, Corey Bennett, who I promised this topic to. But I'm afraid desperate times call for desperate
Oh,
measures.
so I'm option fucking, I'm not even option C, I'm option D for
Desperate.
this.
No, in fairness, I didn't actually approach Corey when I was going to make this episode, so
Yeah.
there is that. But
Yeah.
yes, this calls for desperate Zoom sister calls. And also Corey is very much intelligent enough to discuss a vast array of other things, so we're covered. It's all fine.
Absolute bastard. You saying I'm not?
No, oh, no, God, I knew this was going to happen.
I'm just winding you up. Anyway, continue.
What I want to do is essentially run through our thoughts and eventually a ranking on the Harry
Hmm.
Potter series as a whole, because fun fact, I was actually meant to do this a long time ago when they all
Hmm.
got released on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
I didn't. So now this just feels completely out of the blue. But I wanted to open this conversation with because it was such an integral part of our childhood, we
Mm,
grew up with these films.
sure.
Up until quite recently, I didn't really regard them as films. I didn't see them like I didn't watch them like I would any other film that I was watching, right? I didn't have my
Right.
film watcher's eye on. I was just sort of absorbing them as they were, in the sense of the feelings and the excitement I got out of them as a kid.
Sure.
And that is why I think you were saying that you have two different rankings. Am I right?
I do have two different rankings. I've got a head ranking and a heart ranking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I think that's I don't actually have two rankings, but that was the big battle, was
sure.
going, which ones do I love the
Do I
most and which
like this
ones.
or is it good?
Exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
separating my tastes from the art itself.
Oh,
um
fancy fancy.
yeah, well,
The art.
standards must be maintained.
The
I
Expelliarmus. Oh,
Very good.
thank
Well done.
you. Thank
Well
you.
done. You could do, art Vada Kedavra and all this kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
let's not get into art based spell puns. But yes, the point of that is that actually deciphering
Mm,
how objectively good are as fantasy films, rather than just what
sure.
I enjoy, I think is really difficult. And yet,
Mm.
my number one is my number one because it's my favorite.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
So I've not stuck to my own rules. That having been said,
Mm.
what is your least favorite Harry Potter film?
Okay. So didn't think this is where you were going to start. I'll level.
No.
Um, I So by a lovely happenstance, by fortune, I've been watching them. I've been watching them. That's the end of that sentence. I've been watching them.
Good, moving on. So, Terminator franchise.
I've been, no, I've been going through over the last like couple of weeks, and I've been like watching one every evening or so, or when I've got like a free 10 minutes at work. No, oh my God, cut that out.
They're
No,
longer than 10
cut
minutes,
that
to be
out.
fair.
Shh, cut that. I don't get fired.
Yes, no,
Um.
I employer. I don't watch anything in my. I don't have breaks.
My employer lives next door to you. I don't want to get fired. So basically, they're quite recent in my mind. I have a least favorite in terms of what I enjoy, but I
Mhm.
do have one that I think is the worst.
Okay. So in which case,
Mm,
let me alter the question.
sure,
We're going to begin the sort of the ranking phase. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the normal ranking system that I employ on these
sure.
podcasts, which is we both say whatever our last one is, and if it's not the same, we don't talk about it. The only time we talk about a film is when we've both cited it in our lists, right?
But we're only going through 7 films.
Well, 8 films, actually.
For those listening on the podcast, Dom just waved his finger and waggled his head.
I was incredibly sassy at that particular moment. But yes, but no, but the idea was, say if you had a certain film at number 8 and then I had it at number 6, once
Yeah.
I'd cited it at 6, we then talk about it, right? You catch my
Um,
drift? So that we don't talk about films twice, right?
oh, okay. So it's the second time that you mention it.
Yeah. Like
Fun.
if we yeah, it'll make sense. It'll make sense
Okay.
come
Look,
the
I'm just
ranking up.
gonna follow
So
your lead. I've done no preparation for this.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Mine is minimal. I'll be honest.
Okay.
Again, I'm going off
You
head
were like, "What's
vibes.
your list?" at the beginning of this call, and I was like, "I don't know." And you were like, "Write a
I'll make
list."
one.
In
Yeah.
the last 5 minutes, I've written a list.
Do you know what happened at the very start of the last episode we did as well? You went, I've not prepared for this at all.
Yeah.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Well, no, to be fair, I hadn't prepared for the last one at all because you came into the kitchen and you're like, "When do you have time?" And I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, I've got an hour now. I might as well."
Yeah.
And then you messaged me today because I was option fucking C, and you messaged me and you were like, "What are you doing tonight?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I've got gym." And then I was maybe going to go out for a gym. And then you were like, "Oh, do you want to do a podcast?" I was like, "Yeah, I do. But I am going to
You
go to the gym because I planned it into my schedule.
you
And so I'll call
only
you
said Jim,
two,
in
I'll call you in
fairness.
2 hours." And
People did not tune into this for sibling bickery, all right?
anyway, I haven't prepared.
What is that's fine. What
Mm.
is number 8 on your list?
So I'm approaching these films also from the perspective of somebody who's a big fan of the books.
Ah, now there is a caveat that we should have
Oh
established.
no,
You're
but
coming
let
from a book. No, no, no. This is fine. That's fine. You're coming from
okay.
a book enjoyer's
I
perspective. Yeah.
so I know a lot about Harry Potter. I'm not one of those freaks who's like gonna plan my wedding to be a Harry Potter wedding, you know? I'm not one of those people that's like drape my walls in the fucking Marauders map wallpaper. Like I'm not gonna do that in the nicest way. God bless you, peace be to you. I think you're a freak, right?
In the nice, yeah, in the nicest way. I'm not gonna be one of those freaks.
In the nicest way. I'm not gonna do that. I do know a lot about it. I'm very, very knowledgeable on it because I listen to Stephen Fry talk me to sleep when I listen to these
Hmm.
audiobooks, right? Or when I'm on the tube and I'm bored. Um,
Harry pocketed it.
Harry did it. But from the perspective of I know the story, I like the books, blah 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 blah. I think, oh, I just hit me mic. I think number 6 is the worst film because I think that's where we start to dramatically deviate from the story, and that's where things need to sort of well, actually, that's not true. It's not where we start to dramatically deviate from the from the explanation of the books, but I just think that like I love the 6th film. If we're going off favorites, adore it. But if we're going off films and how good I think they are, I don't think number 6 is up there.
Okay, fine. So pause it there. I'm going to cover out my list now by saying the books don't matter. And this isn't a Harry Potter thing specifically, in my view, anyway. I know that they
Sure.
obviously do to people, but this isn't a Harry Potter thing specifically. I think book adaptations are successful ones are so
Mm,
few and far between
sure.
that, obviously when they do go very well, like June has done over
Right.
the last 2 years or whatever it is, they're lauded very much. I think when doing a book adaptation, most of the time you sort of have to just take the film as the film and use the book as, yes, a source material, but
No, no, sure,
not
I
a
get that.
direct thing.
Well, in
Yeah.
that case, that negates most of the justification that I have for
No,
this
no,
list that I just
no,
thought of
but
in the last
but
5 minutes.
but that you can still use it as a justification because
Okay,
the source material is
but it's
important.
not your justification.
No, exactly. It's not my justification.
Calm, that's right.
The David Lynch version of Dune is just has an awful job at deciphering what the book is actually saying because it doesn't give it
Mm,
the right length of time, etc., etc. But anyway,
mm,
um, as far as I'm concerned, and I have noticed myself in thinking about them more as films rather than the feelings they gave me as a kid,
sure.
becoming a very cynical, grumpy old man
Mm,
at the ripe old age of 21 because for me, unquestionably, number 8 on the list is the Chamber of Secrets.
interesting. Take me through that.
I won't until you've said it.
I understand the premise of your system now.
Let's leave the Chamber of Secrets and the Half Blood Prince there then, and you tell me what is number 7 on your list.
But then how do we ever talk about any I don't understand the program. Right, and okay.
It's Verity, Verity,
It's fine,
Verity.
it's
This
fine,
is
it's
this
fine,
God.
it's
It's like
fine.
trying to get mum to write an email.
It's
Um, uh, you have said Harper Prince, and
yeah,
I have said the Chamber of Secrets.
yeah.
Therefore, if we wanted to 7, and you
Mm,
now said the Chamber of Secrets,
yeah,
we'd talk about it.
I
If
get you.
I now said the Harper
It's the
Prince, we'd
second
talk
person
about
to
it.
say it.
Yeah,
Okay. Also, none of these rankings have technically any backing or any premise. I'm kind of making it up on the spot. So,
aren't we all?
interestingly, in terms of good films, I think number 7 is Chamber of Secrets.
Okay. In which case, let's talk
Talk
about the
about
Chamber of
Chamber of
Secrets.
Secrets.
I'll go first just because I think I feel more passionately about not liking it.
Okay.
I think it's nothing offensive about it at all, but
Mm.
a lot of my hatred from it comes from a particular detail.
My hatred. Sorry,
A
continue.
lot of it comes from a particular detail, which is when Harry and Ron are walking down the corridor late at night, they have a piece of paper about the basilisk, right?
Sh- Sure. What?
And
Yeah.
on it, it says spiders flee before it, yeah?
Yeah.
The next line of that piece of paper says, the crowing of the rooster can kill it. And they enter the Chamber of Secrets completely roosterless. Now, why on earth show us that, right?
See, you see, you see.
Now it's
This
in
is
the
where the
book.
books
I'm
come
sure
into
it's in the
play
books, but the
because
problem is,
they say that the basilisk has killed all the roosters. Hagrid's
sure,
like, oh no, what's happened to all my roosters? And they're like,
sure,
oh my God, I wonder what's happened. And
yeah,
it's the
but
basilisk.
don't nod to the book if you aren't going to successfully fulfill the premise that you are nodding to, is
Okay,
my problem
well,
there.
that's my problem with all of the later ones.
No, I understand that, but that's not like I mean, that's just sort of bugbear number one. But actually, as
Okay.
a film,
Mm,
I think it's really choppy. I think it's completely episodic. I don't think it actually it's interesting because as a film, obviously the way it plays out is sort of petrification out aftermath, petrification aftermath, and that sort of continues on the whole time.
mm,
Um and I start to get really unengaged by it. I think there's a couple of good bits in it. Like I think Gilderoy Lockhart is one of the best screen portrayals you'll ever see. I think it's
mm,
hysterical.
mhm,
I love the bit with Aragog and all the spiders. I think that's
mhm,
really engaging and creepy, but the whole thing feels a little bit more panto than the rest of the series combined. And I understand that it was still at the sort of the embedding into kids' age. This was very much the sort of
mm,
time of getting to know Hogwarts and it still being a fantasy adventure. But I just think it's sort of one of the weaker scripts. I think it's not actually that interesting filmmaking wise. All
mm.
production design and everything that's always good about Harry Potter is obviously all there. I just think it's the least substantial of any of the films.
Sure. Okay. I'm with you. I get it. Um, I agree with some of that. I disagree with some of that.
Okay.
So I think that I completely agree that Gilderoy Lockhart is fucking genius. Um, and it's because Kenneth Branagh is low-key just kind of playing a stereotype of himself.
Yeah.
Like, when everyone's like, oh, what's a really iconic role in history? You're like, Gilderoy Lockhart, Kenneth Branagh. My mate from drama school, every now and then, she used to be like, can you all see me? Can you all hear me? And immediately, like everyone knows what you're doing. They know what you're talking about. I think, yeah, that's brilliant. A pet peeve of mine I have is just Bonnie Wright. She's Bonnie Wright as a person in the franchise of Harry Potter, and she
Right.
features quite heavily in the Chamber of Secrets. I don't like some of the ways in which the scenes are formed. I think that in the first one it works quite well because we're getting to know these characters. There's quite a lot to fit into a small space of time, and it's supposed to feel like in the first one, we're very much in that position of, okay, well, we're beginning this story, so you're getting to know these people. It is a kind of kids thing. We're not quite sure if it's going to happen, if it's going to work or not yet. So, like, let's delve in. Whereas in the Chamber of Secrets, I think there are some things that you just need to establish. There should be some things that are established before you, like, since you've made the first one and the first one's gone well, the second one should be improved upon that.
People's acting got worse from the first film to this one, which is quite interesting given the
Or
nature
when
of
we're
the
saying
test scene.
peoples, I'd
I
like
mean, I
a,
mean the main
the
three.
children.
Yeah,
Yeah. The
yeah.
children who were forced to work at 11 years old.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
And listen,
No, I'm glad we're on the same page there.
I'm not saying that I could have done any better than them because obviously not. But I'm
Hmm.
just saying
Oh, I think you've
objectively.
points you could have done.
Well,
But
it depends.
mm.
No, you can't. But that is now iconic. I'm afraid.
It is.
The thing about the Chamber of Secrets is it's a lot of ideas, but they're all sort of things. They're all kind of
Mm.
just things. They're not actually exploring much.
What,
And
yeah,
I
as in
don't,
you think it feels
it
disjointed.
does feel disjointed, yeah.
Mm.
It's got a deeply engaging level of Jason Isaacs in it. You can never have too
Too
much
much
Jason
Jason
Isaacs,
Isaacs.
as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I think the second he's introduced in the Death of Stalin is one of the most Oscar-worthy moments that I've ever seen in my entire life. Just, I mean,
Right.
throwing that coat off and all the
Sure.
medals, man, it's fantastic. It all just feels like, and actually, when you look at the way that it's shot, interestingly, it's got a really sort of naturalistic tinge on quite a lot of it.
Right.
Like the color palette seems to have gotten less saturated for the second film. And obviously that maybe that feeds into the idea of it being a little bit more of a dangerous place to come back to, but it
Mm.
just, I don't know, it all felt a little bit lackluster by the end of it. That's not to say that nobody was trying. It's just if
Mm.
I was going to look at things objectively, it's the one I would go back to the least.
Sure. I get that. I get that.
when you get to stuff like the Quidditch match, it feels like a pale imitation of the first one, with
Mm,
this, the very same style of shots of people in the, teachers in the stands looking on
mm,
are all very similar. And the reason why I love some of the later ones a lot more than this is because they are far more adventurous. I like it when a Potter film takes it in a direction it wasn't going in before, and does something which gives it its own feeling to it. The problem with the Chamber of Secrets is it doesn't have its own distinct feeling to it. It feels like an extension of the first one and not as good as the first one. So
mhm.
that's my issue.
Okay, cool.
On that matter, then, my grumpiness continues because my number 7 is the Philosopher's Stone.
We've just done them. Oh, your number seven.
My number 7.
Calm. Mine's not.
That's fine. We know yours is the Chamber of Secrets. So, in which case, then, what is your number 6?
My number 6 is. Hmm. Yeah, cool. I'm gonna make the decision right now. My number 6. Um, my number 6 is Prisoner of Azkaban. Now, and I'll tell you.
Oh my god!
No, actually, is it? No. Okay, it's not. My number five. My number five
Not
is
that you're easily swayed by the reactions of other
no, 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 no,
people.
no, no. I've written down things, but my number 5 is Prisoner of Azkaban. My number 6 is Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Okay, fine.
And the reason that it's you have a weird system.
It's not a weird system. If you,
What's
if
your
you,
number 6
if
then?
you, there you go. That's the way we do this. If you'd listen to the Michael episodes with all that kind of stuff, then you'd know,
I'd
but you
listen.
don't.
I'll be honest. I'd listen, but they're in the background. Right. I'm too
any
nervous. God.
any complaint that you had from the start of this podcast is now null and void. Um,
What's your number 6?
my number 6 is the Order of the Phoenix.
Okay. Interesting there. Yeah.
So we're still waiting for the other person to confirm the Philosopher's Stone, the Order of the Phoenix, Deathly Hallows Part 2, and the Half-Blood Prince.
Yeah.
So we're all waiting on them. So in which case we have to go to number 5, which for you is the Prisoner of Azkaban, correct?
Prisoner of Azkaban.
In which case we will continue waiting onwards. My number 5 is the Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Well, I've already said that.
You have, so we will do the Deathly Hallows Part 2.
I understand the system.
Let you kick us off because I kicked us off for Chamber of Secrets.
Okay, the entire premise of the Deathly Hallows Part 2, okay, maybe not the entire premise, but like 2/3 of the movie happens on a bridge that didn't exist for the other 7 movies. It all happens in a place that wasn't there. I'm obviously I have other issues with the film as a whole, and I have other things that I love about it. I think it's probably an incredible feat of CGI. I think it's an incredible feat of acting in some scenarios. I think that there are so many things that I quote from it on a daily basis, but the basic problem is it happens somewhere that didn't exist for the 7 years before now, and is the crux of the defensive mechanism of Hogwarts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
The castle is now fundamentally too high to be reached by boat.
but this is what I mean, right? So in number 1, you're like, so I'm such a nerd. At one point in my life, I was like, I wonder what the floor plan of Hogwarts is. So I looked it up and I was like,
For
oh,
fuck's sake.
no, 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 no. It was only because I was like, oh, something doesn't add up. I was looking at the movies and I was like reading the books and I was like, the maths isn't mathsing. It doesn't add up. Someone's made a mistake. So I looked up, I was like Googling the floor plan of Hogwarts. And I was like, what is this? What is the floor plan of Hogwarts? Like, where am I going to find the charms room? Like, what's up the astronomy tower? And I was like, I wonder what the exact floor plan of Hogwarts is. Now, J.K. Rowling's not like Tolkien in that, she hasn't created like a bunch of maps and stuff about her worlds that she can be like, and over here is like the forest of the middle of the, I don't know what's in fucking The Hobbit, but like she's not like, oh, here are the
Jesus Christ.
misty mountains or the like shadowy mountains or like the snowy mountains or whatever. Like
Let's
she's
not make it any worse. Let's just.
but so she hadn't created it. She just writes some stuff in the books that is just an understanding. So like where Gryffindor common room is in particular
Yeah.
tower, what's in the astronomy tower, that the Ravenclaw has a tower, that kind of thing. So they were just understanding, but I was like, oh, I want to know what the floor plan is. And so I tried to find it. It doesn't exist, but there have been people that have like tried to recreate it, and the nerds online, and we're a lovely community. We're great. We're great fun. But something that really fucked me off is in the final movie, that bridge just wasn't there before, and it's played no part up until now. You watch the silhouette of the castle in the first movie when they're all approaching it by the boat. There it is. It looks very pretty. The bridge doesn't exist. Second movie, yep, they're running around from the Chamber of Secrets. The bridge doesn't exist. Third movie, Harry's flying on a broom and on a hippogriff. The bridge doesn't exist.
Are we
Fourth movie,
absolutely certain that it
no,
doesn't
you
exist?
don't understand how much I have looked into this.
Okay.
It's not there. Now, obviously, I'm willing to talk about other things about this film, but I need it
Yeah.
understood and
Well, I'll be honest with you,
established.
Verity. We're about 30 minutes into this recording. We're still on the bridge.
I
Anyway, the
also
film.
anyway anyway the film. I think that there are fundamental things, and this is why I do think that the books play a part, because I think that in the final film there are some things that are unexplained, and I don't think that that's necessarily like I don't think that's a hindrance to the storytelling, and I don't think that that means it prevents us from enjoying it. But I do think that there are some things that just aren't explained, and I think if they'd been explained in some of the previous films, and if we were able to give that the amount of time and explanation that the books receive, and obviously that's an impossibility within a film, but there are certain things that I think it's important to know if you're gonna have this like a universe around something and this like lore around something. And one thing that does get to me, so when Voldemort dies, spoiler alert, guys, Voldemort dies. When
What? I never knew
Voldemort,
that.
you guys, you'll never guess. When Voldemort dies, I remember watching that in 3D. I remember cowering as the disintegration of his skin headed towards me. Okay. I remember watching Voldemort die in 3D and thinking like, oh, I'm about to get Voldemort on me, you know? And like obviously you're not, but that's the impression that you get when you watch something in 3D, right? With the silly glasses. But in the premise of it is he's just supposed to die like a regular human being because there's this idea that he's no more than a regular human being. Now, I'm not saying that that's the reason that I don't like number two, but I'm saying that that's a contributing factor. That's an example of what I mean, in that there are a number of things that are a bit unexplained as to why they happen. And I think that if they'd been better preempted in the films before that, we might have been afforded the opportunity to understand a little bit better. I also just fundamentally think that when you get to that point, I have an issue with this idea that the books kind of dismiss, but the films really play into at points, especially in the latter stages, which is like an intrinsic good versus an intrinsic evil, and shown within like coloring of the movie, for example. I really get that all the bad guys wear black. Love it. It's a slimming color. Why wouldn't you? But I do think that there's part of it that I think, like, at the end of the day, these are school kids fighting a war in inverted commas.
Against magic Nazis. That's who.
A
Against
bit
the
again
magical the magical
against the magic
KKK.
Nazis.
The
Yeah, yeah,
magical
sure.
KKK. Yeah.
I don't care for these new Nazis. Sometimes I think there's too much pressure put on like, oh, good versus evil. Like everyone in the school is just automatically good, and then like every Slytherin is evil, and they're like put them in the dungeons. And you're like, yeah.
That is an interesting
You
moment, isn't
know?
it? Well, it turns. I think that moment is odd because that moment is a moment that's supposed to get the kids watching back on side who may have been put out by the fact that it is now a little bit more grown up than it was when they first started watching.
Mm,
Because obviously, as to be expected, when this film, it was 2011, this film came out. Obviously, some kids will have been at the beginning of the Potter journey and have watched them
mm,
all sequentially, very quickly, back to back, and
mm,
that's a moment for them to be like, right. So the feelings of bad from the first film that we got, which let's be honest, for most of the first film, the bad comes from people of Slytherin who are knobheads and Snape and Quirrell, right?
mm,
That's all contained within the school, and I think
mm,
it's a callback to that feeling of being able to keep the school free of the antagonistic force in it. Obviously when you're an adult it plays a bit like, well, I mean, these kids, some of them could have ended up being, Harry was nearly in Slytherin, you know what I mean? So all the people that were nearly in Gryffindor going to the dungeons, what's the point of there?
yeah.
I understand that. What I will say about the film though is that it's It's at number, let me check my notes. It's at number 5 for me, and we're now into the films that I really, really like. I think the guy's name who is the cinematographer is Eduardo Sarra, and
Mhm.
he also did the Unbreakable trilogy with M. Night Shyamalan and James McAvoy and Bruce Willis and all that. And he also did Girl with a Pearl Earring.
Mm.
And I think it's very evident that this film is handled by someone who knows what good CGI can do.
Sure.
And I think there are, as you
Yeah, the
mentioned,
CGI is immaculate.
there are moments in this that the CGI is genuinely breathtaking. I think it creates a really, really strong atmosphere
Mm.
in this film. I think the cinematography combined with particularly a standout thing for me is the music from Alejandro de Pla. I think
Interesting.
Lily's theme is absolutely brilliant, and the only like the big issue that I have with the Deathly
Mm.
Hallows Part 2, it has too much to do, and therefore it cannot do it all comprehensively,
Sure.
because to do so would require the to go
Hours
at
and
the
hours.
to go at the to go at the pace
Yeah.
of the first film would take too long. And
Yeah.
what I commend it for is the fact that it squeezed it in and didn't make it too obvious that it was
Mm.
squeezing things in. I think that's
Mm.
really important. And obviously, that means it's going to have to omit things from the book. But this is what I always say about the book to film comparison: is a book takes how long to read, and
No, I
every
agree.
single one of those pages could become a 5 minute piece or a 2 minute scene,
Yeah.
and you can't extend 400, 500, 600 pages to that length of a
I
film.
completely agree with the thing about the book. My issue was that like there are some things that are explained and we can
Yeah,
only understand because they've been explained by the book.
yeah,
And if you're just watching the films, you're going to come out of it and be like, wait, hang on, why'd they do that? To be fair, the Deathly Hallows as a whole
mhm.
is some of the best acting.
Yes,
Not just by the like main three, but generally, I
across the
think
board.
that obviously it's when you have the loose ends are tied, aren't they, for the last films? So you have a lot of those famous British actors, those classic British actors, all in the same space at the same time. So you've got, the Julie Walters fighting Helena Bonham Carter. You've got Ray Fiennes in the same room as Jason Isaacs and Maggie Smith.
Yeah,
You've got all of these people being able to work off each other and
yeah.
being able to utilize each other in order to act better. And I think that makes the kids act better. And I think it like you believe it more. You believe the stakes of it. You believe that it's higher because so many people are being exemplary at what they do.
I completely agree, and
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I think the reason why this is one of the ones that I really like is
Mm,
because I adore the start of the film and I
mm,
adore the end of the film, because I think the acting is so good, but also the genuinely grown up nature with which the film approaches itself at the start,
mm.
talking to what's the goblin's name?
Gripper.
Grip hook, yeah. Talking to him at the start, and that feels like a proper conversation. It's well scripted, it's well acted, it's more patient than it normally would have been. It's
Also,
taking
shout out to
itself
Warwick Davies for playing
shout
every
for being
single
every
like
single small character.
yeah.
It's just goated. He's
Let me
such a
tell you,
legend.
I once had an app on my phone when I had no, it wasn't a phone, it was an iPod Touch. When I was a child, I had an app on my iPod Touch, okay, and I wanted to play Harry Potter games, so I searched for like a Harry Potter game. I wanted to play that spell one that you had to pay for, but I couldn't pay for it because I was a
Yep,
child. So
yep.
I found this app, and genuinely, no word of a lie, it was called Pocket Warwick. Okay, and to do, you had to treat Warwick Davies like a fucking Tamagotchi.
Oh my
Okay,
god.
and you have to get Warwick Davies from a Z-list celebrity to an to an A-list celebrity when looking after him and like doing deals with him. And but it was Warwick Davies' voice. Like it was Warwick
Was
Davies.
this an app commissioned by Stephen
So,
Merchant and Ricky
so
Gervais by any
he
chance?
must have had like stakes in it. Like Warwick Davies, like somebody pitched to Warwick Davies, like, "Hey, Warwick, we're thinking of doing an app about getting your
Oh my
career off the ground." And
god.
he's like, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. What's it called?" And they're like, "We're thinking you call it Pocket
Pocket
Warwick."
Warwick, blimey.
And I played this game, not for
Well,
very long.
I hope
It was quite
that
shit, but can you
I
imagine?
know.
Can you
I
imagine?
do hope he was, yeah, heavily consulted and greenlit all of that of his
Like,
own free will.
what?
The thing is, he strikes me. After watching Life's Too Short, he strikes me as the kind of guy that has impeccable sense of
Oh,
self
I think he's got a
humor.
very good like sense of humor. But
Yeah,
I also think that what the fuck?
I'm conscious of time, so
Yeah,
I am
let's
going to
move on.
move us on.
You
Um,
can edit this out. It's fine.
I will, but it's fine. I
You
won't.
can edit pocket work out.
No pocket work staying in. Um, so at number five, you had what was it? Azkaban, yeah.
Is that the one before? Hang on. 8, 7, 6, 5. Yep.
Okay,
Azkaban.
so we're going on to our number four here, and let's
Okay.
bloody hope we have some crossover. I don't think it's possible for us not to actually. What is your number four?
Order of the Phoenix.
Okay, so we've both cited Order of the Phoenix.
Hmm.
So I'll kick this off. I think this film would fall apart quite easily if it wasn't for the genius, most fantastic, most evil, most intriguing, engaging, utterly detestable performance from Imelda
Adjectives.
Staunton that you've ever seen.
Imelda Staunton.
I think
She's
Dolores Umbridge is one of the finest bits of character work you will ever see.
I agree.
She's a genius. I
Yeah.
think it's the crux of the whole film,
Hmm.
and that's one of the good things about it is it brings it back to that idea that for most of the film, the evil actually is within the castles of Hogwarts itself, and it gives itself a reason to not do what the tail end of six and then seven and eight have to do, which is
Mm,
move outside of the castle. Obviously,
sure.
source material and all that, but it keeps us engaged in the actual building of Hogwarts. I think she's brilliant. I think all the stuff with her is brilliant because it's a
Mm,
nice nod to stuff like governmental interference, which is actually quite an interesting theme to play with in a kids movie.
mm,
I also think it's one of the much better Daniel Radcliffe performance. I think it's one of the ones where he stands out as an actor himself. All
mm,
the stuff with battling his head and Voldemort being in his head and all that kind of thing
mm,
is really good. I
mm.
just think that the rest of it is a little bit aimless. And the reason I
Yeah.
think it's a bit aimless is because it sort of goes, we could probably do this. There's not quite, things aren't quite happening in this film. So let's just get everyone involved for a bit and let's just throw lots of things at the wall and hope that some of them stick.
Right.
So that by the time you get to that end sequence where again they leave the castle and go into the ministry, you feel equipped for it. I would prefer them to spend time in places that aren't shown in the film. I think David Yates is a good director, but I don't think there's much more going on than what is in the script, if you know what I
Mm,
mean, in
hmm.
terms of what's directed.
Sure.
And I think it's serviceable. I think there's parts of it that are really enjoyable, but I don't think it's the tip top film.
Mm. No, I think that's an astute summary. I think Imelda Staunton is one of the best actors in Harry Potter, full stop. I quite like the strong political statement that's made.
Mhm.
And I understand that they're books for kids and I don't know all that stuff, but I think it's a lovely a lovely layman's term introduction to political interference, and I think that's fun.
Yeah.
I think the pace, although it's meant to show that teenage angst that's really important at this stage, they're supposed to be like 15, 16. The point at which it's that it's the reference to sort of like the hormonal changeability of a teenager. So Harry having all of these sort of like angry feelings is supposed to be that kind of door slamming age of being a 15-year-old and your mum says do your homework and you tell her to fuck off. Like it's supposed to be all of that kind of teen angst channeled through a different perspective. For that reason, I think they do that quite well. I think they demonstrate, like you say, Daniel Radcliffe gives a good performance, and I think they demonstrate that teen angst and that the simmerings of that real tension and the fact that it's starting to get darker. I think that's done very well, and I think it's really helped along by the likes of Gary Oldman and kind of adding a gravity and a weight to that
It
situation.
never hurts to have Gary Oldman appear, does it?
Absolutely. And I think also, it is when we start to get darker as the story continues. So I think, however, I don't like it in terms of like my own opinions, um, as just to sit and watch, because actually I don't like a lot of the characters at this point, if that makes sense. I don't particularly like Harry at this moment because he's a bit of an arse. Because he is doing that, like not hormonal, but that angry, angsty, he's going through all of those emotions. So I'm not actually backing him at this point. I don't like Dumbledore because he fucks off,
That is just such a weird thing, and like,
which yeah isn't explained at all, which is
no.
unhelpful. Um, I don't like some of the characters, like Cho Chang. I think I can't remember her real name, but she's a brilliant actress. I
Hmm.
watched her in a play recently. She's
Hmm.
fantastic. But in that, I didn't feel like the script gave her any substance. So I wasn't, I'm not like interested. Actually, do you know what? I think Order of the Phoenix comes further down on my list than I put it.
Well,
And now that I'm
I had
thinking
it
about it.
at number 6, and you've
Yeah.
provisionally had it here at number 4. You want to
Yeah,
do
no,
rejig?
I think it goes lower down than that.
I think you should swap Azkaban and Order of the Phoenix.
Okay, we'll come to Azkaban in a minute, but
Yeah, we will.
because yeah, sure. But Order
There's
of the Phoenix is lower down.
Yeah.
But also, one thing I will say is I do think what the film does well is it begins to introduce us to this idea of grey area. This
Okay.
whole speech with Sirius that's like, oh, you're not just a good person or a Death Eater, like there's different parts of us. And the fact that Harry is having all of these sort of like angry moments and that kind of stuff, it begins to properly introduce not just everyone outside of Hogwarts is bad and everybody inside Hogwarts is good. It starts to bring in that idea of a grey area and that idea that's so prevalent as you carry on that actually it takes the smallest thing for somebody to, you know, be a good person or fall further down the scale of being a bad person, whatever. Like
Yeah.
that grey area.
So I have a few things to say following on from that, which I totally agree with. I think
Mhm.
following on from that idea, what I've seen I genuinely love is the conversation with Seamus when he first goes back into the common room,
Yep.
and they talk about why his summer was so crap.
Hmm.
And the let me see because of you, that one. It's That's a really clever bit, and that is a really good indictment as to why Harry is feeling so uptight, is because he's feeling genuinely persecuted, because obviously there's a whole debate about was what he experienced in the fourth film real or not. Is
Mm.
Voldemort really back, and people not believing? And again, that's ties into the political themes. I think that's great. I do think that works, but that tone is not consistent. And the reason it's not consistent is because there's still moments in it where it feels we shouldn't still be getting to know the ins and outs of Hogwarts come film number 5, I don't think. And it's just a side point, by the way, when you mentioned Gary Oldman, I didn't mention Gary Oldman or Daniel Day-Lewis when we talk about who are the best actors ever, and I just thought we had to do that anyway.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that, just putting that on the record now. But this is the point where I'm going to come on to the tetchy issue, which is that some of the source material is immensely questionable. So Cho Chang is
Yeah.
one of the only Asian characters, and Kingsley Shacklebolt is a black character, and Seamus Finnegan is famous
Irish.
for blowing things up because he's Irish and all this
Mm.
kind of stuff. And
Yeah, it's dumb.
it's all this kind of stuff which is just and the elves that work at Hogwarts making the food are slaves, but they're happy to be doing so. Are they? Whatever it
Oh
is, all
yeah,
these
that's a
ridiculous kind of
really
stuff.
major. And I'm quite glad they took that out of the book for the film because that would have been a
Yeah.
whole other kettle of fish.
It's at this point that I say to the films, yeah, have a bit more creative license, please. And I understand
Mm.
that the source material is beloved and the source material is the source material. And whatever you think of J.K. Rowling, her success is unquestionable. She's
Mm.
made more money than the Queen.
She's got an
And
incredible imagination.
yes, there's definitely an excellent imagination.
Hmm.
But there are parts of it which are written to fall down, and this displays some of them in broad daylight, and I don't
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I agree.
And I hate the dichotomy between Harry being someone who is struggling personally and struggling to get people on side, and the pedagogue Harry, which is teaching all the other students how to do things. The switch from one to the other is far too fast,
Mm.
and they couldn't have had testimony from Ron and Hermione before they all met at
Sure.
the in Hogsmeade to join the army and all that kind of stuff. I just think
Mm.
there's too much of it. Like, and it goes back to this old sort of this Bond idea. Now, I actually adore No Time to Die, as I mentioned on the other podcast, but
Mm.
it did have a bit of the old thing in it, which is that I'm going somewhere with this. It's this idea that when Q gives Bond the gadgets at the start,
Sure.
there may well be one thing within it, and this happened all the time with Pierce Brosnan and back with Roger Moore and all that kind of stuff, where Q would say, "And we've got you this thing. We don't know what the mission's going to require necessarily, but we've got this thing here's a thing, and then halfway through, or 2/3 of the way through the mission, they suddenly need use of the thing. In
Well, that's
no
just
time,
fiction.
but it isn't, because in No Time to Die, it was in Skyfall, for example, he
Mm.
goes a gun and a radio. Not exactly Christmas, is it? And then Q says, "What do you think we're gonna go give you an exploding pen?" We don't really go in for that sort of thing anymore. And then Inspector, he gets all this gadgety shit, and it's like, so I guess you do go in for that sort of shit now. And in No Time to Die, he gets an EMP watch, which is virtually useless until he has to blow up a henchman's robotic eye in the stairwell, right? And it's like, oh, this suddenly comes in handy.
Where the
And
fuck are you going with this?
where I'm going with this is that the Order of the Phoenix realizes that the previous four films have forgotten to introduce the stuff that it needs for this film, and goes,
Sure.
thing, might need this later. This is my half brother. He's a big giant. Oh, he's going to kill Dolores Umbridge. Actually, he's going to take her away, and that's going to be really good. Yeah, so that's that covered. We need someone to practice. There's a secret room in Hogwarts. Sorry, didn't mention this before. I know, but there it is. Yeah, Harry really likes Cho Chang. Like, that didn't go away. Like, he still really likes her. And I know we want to sort of just like skip past her before, but here she is now in like an actual character this time. Just because she needs to be, and all this kind of stuff. And it just feels like some of it's there because it needs to be, rather than because it works. And that's mine.
So that's I get you. I think that's an issue of not having the space in the films
Yeah,
in order to include some of the
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
from the books. Because again, like that's explained, and it's irritating that we don't get to
It
experience
sure
that
is.
within the films. But the last thing I'll say about Order of the Phoenix is the score. The
Mm,
score is brilliant. Like, I love the score of the Order of the Phoenix. I think there's motifs in there that are really excellent. There's so Umbridge's theme, first
mm,
off, are perfect,
mm,
absolute perfection. I think that it's that and Half-Blood Prince, right? They're very different tones, but the fact that Order of the Phoenix is so dark, and yet this score is so vast. It's not just droning and undertones. There's like that whole like violent
yeah.
that, which I learned to play the other day.
Hmm.
But is do you know what I mean? That there's such a vast range of that. And I
Yeah.
really, really, I do have a bit of a particular place for the score of five.
I understand that, and I agree
Mm,
with all the things that you've mentioned about the score are really standout moments.
mm,
Unfortunately, they're moments, and I
sure.
wish that more of it was like that. Like,
Mm,
you think you're right. The Umbridge's theme and the violin thing that you mentioned are great. I think they work really well, but I wish I could remember more of it.
mm,
And I can remember more of some of the other ones, and that's
okay,
I was. But the
that's
last
fair.
thing, I want to touch on
Sure.
is two things really. Is the entire sequence when they're in the Ministry of Magic. It's the first time we properly see it in detail, and
Mhm.
the production design for that is utterly astonishing. It looks sensational.
Hmm.
And the battle between Dumbledore and Voldemort is
Oh yeah, that is amazing.
the best exchange of spells, and it's the best one battle in the
Mm,
entire series, and I will not hear otherwise. It's so brilliant, and
yeah.
that's an example of CGI and effects
Hmm.
being given care and attention, not pumped out,
I
right?
agree.
And
Although
yeah,
it does turn out that Nya is the most effective spell
it does, it
in.
does, it does. But
No,
we've
don't get me wrong. I
already, yeah,
completely agree. I
yeah.
completely agree. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we've already gotten to that point in the series, knowing that sometimes you don't actually like the best wizards don't actually have to say the spell.
Sure.
But I agree with you. No, it does seem really effective. Okay, and let's move on then.
Next one.
Oh, actually, I didn't say my number four,
Oh,
and we're going to do some callback here because I have number four
as
as the Half Blood Prince, which you had at number eight.
I think I did.
You did. I think Half Blood Prince is Prince. Half Blood Prince. It's the best. No, I think I'm just going to do
You
the rest
think
of
half Hud
the.
flinch?
I'm going to do the rest of the episode of Chris Eubank. I think that Half Blood Prince. I think the Half Blood Prince is the great underrated Harry Potter film,
Mm,
and that's because it's the sum of its parts. It's not anything standout. It's the reason why when you think of the score, you don't think of six, or you think of the scenes, you don't think of six, or you think of the effects necessarily, you don't think of six. That's because none of the elements of the film stand out as the thing to remember from the film. They actually all just contribute together to make what I think is a really nicely coherent, balanced and set structure, which it all correlates to each other. There's no bits of the Half Blood Prince that feel like they are happening outside of the Half Blood Prince. Even the ridiculous stuff like all the love potions and stuff, which a producer with a big stick would just say, look at the scene of Ron getting poisoned and say, yeah, that's coming out. We don't need that. This film's already relatively long as it is. I don't actually mind when it comes to the Half Blood Prince. I think the mood that it sets is great. I think that it's an interim film which could easily get lost. I think it's a film where Harry is changing as a character, but it all lands and it all comes together to sort of evoke this sort of on the edge mood. And the reason why it's on the edge mood is obviously because of what happens at the end of the film. The great safety barrier that Hogwarts has is gone, and I think the way that they build up to Dumbledore's death throughout the whole film, there's a whole film of things
Spoiler.
hanging on a knife edge. Spoiler: films hanging on a knife edge throughout the whole film of things being uncertain and dangerous.
Mm,
And in the moments where it slows down, you feel like it shouldn't slow down, and that's not a criticism. It's like it's a scared thing. It's when he
mm,
goes to Hagrid's hut to say farewell, Aragog, and all that kind of
mhm,
stuff. Like there's a subtle because of the rest of the film. There's a real feeling that whole time that this is a waste of valuable moments. So we don't
mm,
know the point of this. We're uncertain as to what's going to happen. We don't know if it's the right course of action or not. And then it leads to that incredible sequence where Harry and Dumbledore go to the cave, and a genuinely terrifying scene plays out on top of that, like a little diamond thing with the water. I think that's brilliant. I think it all
mm,
looks fantastic. The colors are toned right down and they're all green, as if they're all leading up to this Avada Kedavra shot, which is going to
mm.
be fired at Dumbledore, I think, the whole way through. And it could easily be forgettable. I understand why some people think it is, but I think it comes together for me and works as the contained thing that it is. Obviously, that's not
Yeah.
taking anything to account with the books or anything like that.
No,
So I
no, no.
understand it misses out loads of stuff, but
Sure.
yeah, I love it.
I know what you mean. Okay, so I like the sixth one a lot. And
Hmm.
actually, if we're ranking them on how much I like them as a movie to watch, the
Yeah.
sixth one comes so much further up my rankings. But I have the same issue with the sixth one as you had with the second one, in that I think it's episodic.
Okay.
I think there's things that happen, like we watch this interaction between Harry and Dumbledore, and then we watch this interaction between two other people, and then we watch
Yeah.
Draco try and open a cabinet, and then we go back and we all that kind of stuff. So basically, the reason that I am less taken, or not taken, but the reason that I think that number six isn't as good a film objectively is because I feel like when I think about number six, I think about it in moments. I don't necessarily think about it in one long form structure. But I do love number six because I think it gives a bit of a lightness. I love Half-Blood Prince because up until, the end, it gives a real lightness, and it allows, for just like a year, it allows the kids of Hogwarts to be kids of Hogwarts, really. Like there's this kind of feeling throughout the Half-Blood Prince of like, this is kind of what it would be like to do your A levels at Hogwarts.
Mhm.
Like the focus is so purely, we're back to that kind of number one and number two feeling of there's no bigger concept at the moment. Obviously there is, because we're working towards like defeating Voldemort and blah blah blah, and Draco's about to fuck everything up. But
Yeah.
the concept is, oh, get get to be best friends with your potion master. Like this kind of thing, or the romances that happen and the recognition of understanding between, oh, does he like me? Does he not? That kind of thing. The one thing that I don't like about Half-Blood Prince, it's so pointless that Snape is the Half-Blood Prince. Nothing ever comes of that. Like Harry's got a book. He
Mhm.
absolutely finds a book at the beginning and he's like, I wonder whose book this is. And then the book teaches him some useful shit and one bad spell. And then at the end, Snape is like, I'm the Half-Blood Prince. And then from then on in, we're like, cool. What happens now? Like, what was the point of that? Why? What are you? Is the Half-Blood Prince going to do anything? Are we gonna benefit from?
So I disagree with you that it doesn't mean anything. I don't think you're
Okay,
wrong for thinking that, by the way. I
sure.
completely understand why that would because narratorily it comes at the end and there's no time for it to mean anything, you
Well,
know.
also just like it doesn't carry like there's a lot of things in Harry Potter that are
It
like a
doesn't, yeah,
long-standing
yeah,
things.
and it doesn't
And I'm
carry
like,
over
okay,
to
well, this
anything.
happened for like a film.
Yes, sure, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I totally get that, and there's a genuine reading of the film, which means that that moment is just, oh, that's the moment where he says the thing, and that's why it's called the Half Blood Prince. That's why the
Sure.
film's called that. I get that. However, what I think about it is that it changes the perception of Harry's journey through the whole film, because he had found a character to sort of aspire to in the
Mm.
shape of the Half Blood Prince. He'd found
Hmm.
someone whose methodologies really worked for him and who he felt like was the right person to follow as a pedagogue, as a rule breaker, as a free thinker. And they get to the end of the film, and Harry discovers that it's the person who, in his eyes, has committed the worst betrayal of anyone that he's met so far in Hogwarts. And I
Sure.
think what that does is it completely rewrites the way that he sees the events of his last year and turns them into an inward worry about his own character. It turns them
Mm.
into, and that's why, you know, it's weird because the moment where he asks Ginny to get rid of the book, right?
Yeah.
And you know, say what you will about that bit, obviously, but
Mm.
he's reluctant, right, to have the
Sure.
book taken off him. And before that has happened, let's not forget that in this film, you know, we talk about it being, this would be what it's like to do your A levels at school. Yeah, of course it is, with all the dinners and all that kind of stuff. I mean, at a very, very fucking posh school, but yeah,
Mm.
sure. Harry is seconds away from killing Draco in this film. Like, he
Yeah.
genuinely nearly kills him.
Mm.
And despite that, it still takes a bit of time for him to give the book back.
Yeah.
And when you get to the end of the film and you realize that the person he's been following is someone who, let's not, you know, he's not come round to Snape being on the side of the good yet. He's not, as far as Harry's concerned, he's still that evil guy that it was from the first film.
Sure. Sure.
And I think in that moment, the hit is not, it was Snape all along, and Snape is this thing. The hit
And
is
he would have gotten
Harry.
away with it if it wasn't.
um, the hit is that Harry was perfectly fine with
Mm.
everything that was being taught to him until he found out who it was coming from.
Sure.
And I think that's really cool. I think that's really important. I think that's a sign of character development. I think it's a sign of the series having an arc that works.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I see that.
and also the inevitable, the great Jim Broadbent is the inevitable
Oh,
and the great Jim Broadbent, and he's
what a
brought
great guy.
in style. So yeah,
Absolutely. What's your next one?
I'm going to ask you for your number three first.
My number three is.
Actually, should we just let's do a rundown first? Let's do your number, your 8 to 3. Just recap what you've done so far.
Oh, I don't know. I can't
Just because this is all
remember.
a bit over the place. Can you not?
Did I say? Okay, I think I
Do you
said.
not have this written down at all?
Well, yeah, but I changed it as I went along.
Did you not just draw arrows on it?
Yep, and now I can't read the arrows. Okay, so
Okay.
I think I said Half-Blood Prince,
Yes,
then Chamber of Secrets,
you did. Yes.
then Deathly Hallows Part 2.
So 6 is Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Eighth for
Yes.
me
Yes.
is Half-Blood Prince.
Yes.
Seventh is Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah.
Sixth is Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Okay.
Fifth is
The Order of the Phoenix you changed it to, didn't you?
I did change it to The Order of the Phoenix. I did.
Yeah.
Fourth is The Prisoner of Azkaban.
Okay, so hold there. Run down mine. My number 8 was the Chamber of Secrets. My number
Cool.
7 was the Philosopher's Stone. My number
Wow.
6 was the Order of the Phoenix. My number
Uh-huh.
5 was Deathly Hallows Part 2. And my number
Yeah.
4 was the Half Blood Prince.
Okay.
So your number 3, our top 3 now. This is why I wanted to do the rundown there. So we've got that ready, and now we can remember the top 3. So your number
Cool.
3 is
My number 3 is Deathly Hallows Part 1.
cool. Right, my number 3, and this is controversial, is The Prisoner of Azkaban.
Okay.
So we'll do The Prisoner of Azkaban.
Cool.
I think it's objectively the best one. The reason that it's objectively the best one is because, particularly at the time, it was a time travel movie that set out its rules and then obeyed them properly. Its
Sure.
twists were not based in the structure of time travel. Its
Mm-hmm.
twists were based in the perceptions of its characters.
Mm-hmm.
And like our good friend Peter Wilson once said, it's like they got to the third film and said, "Oh, we can use the camera to show emotion." Oh, right,
Did
that's
he
what it's.
say that?
Yeah, he did.
That's
Um,
weirdly witty for him.
Love you, Peter. It's the thing. The reason is right. It's what's interesting about this one is it's a tonal shift from the second one. It's probably one of the, if you look at the actual actors themselves, it's the biggest leap from one to the next of them looking very different, I would say.
Cool. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I would agree there.
and the whole film feels a bit different. The
On
whole
that
color.
note,
Yeah.
it is the least dirty they did Harry in terms of haircut. They did him dirty in all of the other films, okay? That poor bastard.
Yeah.
His hair went through so much. Prisoner of
Yeah.
Azkaban, I was like, you look like a regular human being boy.
I love the palette of it. I love that it's darker. I love that it does that time travel thing of being confusing until the mechanics are explained to you.
Mm,
You don't understand why Hermione turns up when she
mm,
does until it's explained to you. And then when you watch the events play out, it's a really strong loop sequence, and all of the stuff with the Whomping Willow going into it and the
mm,
werewolf changing and the idea of having to face your fears
hmm
and having to overcome them rather than avoid them, and luck out by being gifted because you can speak Parseltongue. That's one of the things that
hmm
really bugs me about the Chamber of Secrets, and I know it's from the book, right?
mm.
But the Parseltongue thing is such an annoying. I hate it in films when the main character couldn't be anyone. I really don't like it when they have
Right.
an inherent
So
characteristic
the
which
boy who
makes.
lived really isn't up your
Well,
street.
no, no, right. So obviously the boy who lived thing, obviously that Harry is the central character, right? And the boy
Yeah.
who lived,
Really? You mean it's not called
but
Cho
no,
Chang and the Chamber of Secrets?
it's
What?
called
Oh my
Professor
God.
Professor Sprout and the Untidy Greenhouse. Um, it's so, but the reason we find out that the reason he's the boy who lived, he's not actually anything special. It's
Mm.
just that Lily protected him,
Yep.
right? Lily put a love charm around Harry that protected him from the spell.
Yep.
And what's really annoying about the Chamber of Secrets is it really leans into this thing of like, he can speak parcel tongue. He has a thing
Ah,
that he can do.
but the only reason that he can do
This
that
because
is
Voldemort is
because of
part of him. Yes, I
because
know.
but because Voldemort made a choice between two
Yeah.
people, and it
Yeah,
could
yeah,
have
yeah.
been either of them. It
I
could have
know, I
been
know,
anyone,
I know,
and
I
so
know.
he picked Harry, and now Harry's special. But it's the concept, not that necessarily anybody could defeat Voldemort, because only this person can defeat Voldemort.
Yeah.
But it's this concept of, but the gifts afforded to that person
Yes.
could have been afforded to more
To
than one
anyone.
person
Yeah,
if
yeah.
he just made a different choice back in the
Yeah,
day.
yeah. And the thing about the parcel tongue thing is that's an ability. That's not like an event that's happened to him in the past. An ability he has. The him being the boy who lived is
Yeah, but it's an
just.
ability because of an event.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not like,
yeah.
you
But he
know,
doesn't have an ability to resist the killing curse now. It was a one-off thing that left him with a scar.
yeah,
Right, that's it.
yeah,
But he can now speak to snakes because of Voldemort.
yeah, but he couldn't have done that. Yeah, but anybody who had that imposed on them,
I know, I
it's
know.
like any superhero movie.
Yes, yeah, I know, I know, I know, I know, and I know that this is missing the point,
Like
but
if someone else had fallen in like a vat of nuclear whatever, they'd
yeah,
have the powers.
true. But number one, it gives credence to Ron being able to speak parcel tongue in the eighth film because Harry talks in his sleep, which is just bullshit. Um,
Yeah,
and
that's shit.
uh, it's that idea. It's like episode 9 of Star Wars when you
What?
find out that Rey wasn't just Rey becoming a Jedi couldn't have been anyone becoming a Jedi because she already had elite blood. It's
I
like,
haven't
right,
seen it.
right, okay, but that's the premise, right? That's why we love Into the Spider-Verse, is because anyone can wear the mask. That's the point of that
Sure,
film.
sure, sure.
And I love that Harry's completely susceptible to everything. And the only thing that sets him apart in the end from most of the films is his bravery.
Mm,
I think that's really important. I don't like the second one when I know it's part of the source material and I know it comes from Voldemort, and this is what happens. This is the story. They can't complain
mm.
about it. This is what happens, right? I get it. But
And yet,
it's the only film where he has something which inherently means that he's the only person who could do this outside of just being a brave person. And that
okay,
is frustrating to me because I prefer watching him set himself apart as a character rather than what he can do.
okay. I disagree with all of that, but I'm happy to move
I'm,
on.
I'm, and I'm happy for you to disagree because
Yeah,
I understand that
that's calm.
it's a bit of a stupid point, but it's like a superhero is a superhero,
Mm,
but a kid is a kid. And
sure. But we were talking about number three.
yes, sorry, back to number three. Um, I just think the mood it sets is fantastic. I think
Hmm.
it's haunting. I think obviously there's a geographical rewrite of where everything is in the castle and all that kind of
Mm,
stuff, but I don't care. I
no,
think
neither.
Time Turner's clever. I think Dumbledore in it is really clever. I think the sequence of events is great, and I love the idea that Harry thinks that his dad might be bringing him back, and his ascension to feeling more confident in himself is it was him that did it,
Mm,
not his dad. I think it's fantastic. I think
sure.
it's there's very very little wrong with it, and
Yeah,
that's.
I'd agree with that.
But I just prefer some other films more than it.
Fair. I adore Prisoner of Azkaban. I really, really do because I think again, it's this whole thing of like, oh, you think Sirius bad, Black is bad, but then he's not, and this whole thing. I have one massive pet peeve with the
Mm-hmm.
Prisoner of Azkaban. Okay, and that's genuinely one of the reasons it's not in my top three.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the vignette. There's a
Really?
vignette that changes every scene. Now, there's a massive fucking pet peeve of mine. If I'm watching a theatre show and in that theatre show, you give me a blackout and then a scene up, and you haven't done anything interesting to change that scene, I hate it. If you do the same in a film and it's not well earned, for
Mm,
example, if you just like cut to black and then up, or you just like cut straight without
yeah.
any reasoning, I can't stand it. And there's this whole thing of like every scene change has like a vignette on it. And I'm like, why? I hate the vignette so much. I
Mm,
just can't express to you, not only, okay, and now this is a really petty point, but with something like The Prisoner of Azkaban, you've got kind of two stories in one because they go through it and they do the whole story, and then they kind of go back and they do it again because of the
yeah.
time turner. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've actually got quite a lot of story to fit into not very much time. And I hate that at least 4 seconds of each scene is
It's a vignette.
sliding in and out of a vignette.
Listen,
Like
this is.
it's
I
yeah.
understand that. It reminds me. It's like in Tenet when they have the car crash and it cuts to black and he wakes up in an ambulance and I'm like, that's bad. That is bad. That's not
Yeah.
good.
It's not that I think that it makes the movie a bad movie. I think it's an excellent movie and I love it so much, but it actively irritates me. Something else that something that I think is really brilliant within the film is the idea of, like you say, the disorientation to then having everything explained for us. And again, we've got that idea of like, okay, well, we think that Sirius Black is bad and he's actually good. And then we think that Lupin is the best person we've ever met, and then he's also a werewolf. So there's like that duality there. I don't like the acting. Here
Oh.
is their friend. I think that gives me
Oh.
the ick all the time. That's the biggest ick I've ever seen. It's like an adult wearing Velcro on the tube. I just think it's, oh, no, 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 no. But I do think what I do quite like is that in the previous two films, I mean, in the previous two stories, really, this isn't a film specific thing. This is just a story specific thing.
Mm.
It's been Harry and Ron. Hermione's been there. You know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's been the trio, but like Harry and Ron have been like best buds, best boys, lads, 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 and then
You ain't seen
Hermione,
Bad Boys too.
yeah, exactly. You know, and Hermione has been like, "Ugh, boys,
Oh,
like she's
men.
like been there and she's had a good time, but also she was petrified. She's petrified for half of the second film, and the first one, like I'm pretty sure Ron hates her for like 2/3 of the movie.
Know what
Um,
it means.
know what it means. But then in the third one, she gets her opportunity to shine and be like, "Shut the fuck up, follow me. Where were we at 7?" Like, and you get the opportunity to just see their dynamic between the two of them, and you,
I agree. And also that brings us on to the fact that the film has the gall, the audacity to introduce not just Gary Oldman, not just Gary Oldman and David Thewlis, but
Mm.
Gary Oldman, David Thewlis, and Timothy Spall.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It has the guts to introduce all
Oh, it is
those.
the red carpet of British actors, isn't it?
It's so
Yeah, it's really good.
fabulous, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that this is a film that it's still got the childish charm of
Mm,
um but both the main two scenes that I'm thinking about in terms of where you get the classic, this is fun, let's explore Hogwarts like kids and let's have lessons like kids bits.
sure. Mm.
The main ones are the Boggart and
Love the Boggart.
Buckbeak,
This
right?
class is ridiculous.
God, it's ridiculous. But both of which end up forming meaningful and significantly related
Mm.
parts of the story, right? They're
Hmm.
both useful scenes that tell you about what's going to happen, where the characters are, what the themes are,
Mm.
and yet they're buried in this, childish excitement of getting to know some fun creatures for a bit.
Sure.
And I love that because there is a serious tone to this film. Childish stuff isn't lost or outweighed by it necessarily.
Sure.
It's really nicely balanced, and I think that alongside the fact that it did a cohesive and very strong time travel thing
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is really impressive, and it
I
looks great.
agree.
So
Until number five, where they were like, oh, all of the time turners were smashed, which is why later in the series, Harry can't just go back in time and destroy Voldemort.
yeah,
Um,
it does introduce that possibility, which makes you look at the fourth one and go, oh, they should really
yeah.
have
No, I don't.
undone this.
I've done that. So this
Right.
you're gonna have to edit this so heavily. It's gonna be so long.
It'll be fine. I
Okay.
was expecting it to be over an hour anyway. So
Okay.
we're both.
Strap in, listeners.
So your number three was Deathly Hallows Part One, and mine was Prisoner of Azkaban. Yeah.
It was. Oh
So what's
yes.
your number two?
My number two is purely from my heart, really.
It's the Philosopher's Stone.
I love it so much.
All right, let's do it. Right,
Okay.
because for many people, this film is Christmas.
It is. It's the best thing. So when I'm feeling ill, what I will do is I will buy the fattest packet of biscuits, usually hobnobs, sometimes digestives, and I will sit
Up your
on my
biscuit game. Come
oh no
on.
no no, but the chocolate ones, the chocolates, the really chocolatey hobnobs. I will sit on my sofa, turn on Harry Potter 1 or lie in my bed and turn on Harry Potter 1 and revel, revel in the beauty of it. It's escapism. It's pure escapism. It's literally watching somebody who has gone from this environment that they can't stand
Mhm.
to the place of their dreams, and it therefore becomes the place of your dreams. And I think in the first movie, it's so beautifully created. Cinematography, music, the music in the first film. Oh my fucking God.
Well, listen,
No, 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 no,
John
no, no.
Williams is no, I'm not about to dispute it. John
Okay.
Williams is John Williams,
John,
and
exactly. John Williams of John Williams. And genuinely, the best present that our parents have ever given me is when we went and watched the Harry Potter 1
yeah,
alongside the
yeah, yeah,
Vancouver Symphony Orchestra,
yeah.
playing the music of Harry Potter 1 alongside the movie. That was the best thing
That
I've
was
ever seen in my
fucking
life. That was
amazing.
so sick. Um,
Mm.
Oh, do you know what? Also, I know this shouldn't be a consideration, but it's strongly a consideration. All of the kids are shit actors. So I don't need to worry. I don't need to watch this and think, I'll never be as good as them because all of the kids are shit. So I can just watch it and be like, oh, I'm good at some things. And like it's just beautifully encapsulated in this like lovely snow globe of a world.
Mhm.
And I really, really love that. And actually, I think that that's in the nicest way. We can talk about, what's useful for a teenager at this point in their life. We can talk about the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
darkness of something. We can talk about the way that something's been choreographed. We can talk about the cinematography of it. But actually, the point of Harry Potter, the point of these films, is to make us feel like happy and to give us this idea that this world is something we would want to be involved in. And I feel like nothing does that better than the first movie. The magic of the first movie, through from the moment of Diagon Alley to the second that film finishes, there's not one moment where you think, I wouldn't love that. And I think
Mm.
that's the point of it. And
Yep.
it's food for the soul. It's soup for the soul. Yeah,
It is good soup.
good
Uh,
soup.
I agree with everything you've just said.
Mhm.
Um, I still have it at number seven, and the reasons are grumpy old man reasons. Like you said, the thing about it is the magic of it, and it
Mhm.
absolutely does that with every fiber of
Mm.
its body.
Mhm.
It's just joyous, and I actually think that the best bit of the score is leaving Hogwarts, the theme that
That's
plays when
beautiful.
Harry's in bed, and
Beautiful.
then at the end, with the I'm not going home, not really. I think that's wonderful. No, I love it. Like I do love it, and it brings back such a giddiness in me, and it won't ever not do that. It's just the fact that watching it now, obviously, you notice all the bits of it that are
Oh, you
imperfect and
mean
all
the
this kind
shit
of stuff.
2001 CGI?
Of course, but uh, you know, There are films which transport me back to that giddy feeling
Mm,
better than this. That's
sure.
not to say that this doesn't do
No,
it
no,
and it
I
isn't
get that.
brilliant, because it is. It's just that as far as my feelings towards it go, I am transported back by
Yeah,
uh different stuff.
yeah,
But there's so much warmer. It's a warm film.
yeah.
I want to hug Hagrid. That's what I want to do.
Sure.
I just
That's what we all want to do
exactly. And
until Hagrid
but
hugs you back.
um but yeah, it's the perfect version. And actually, what's really genuinely interesting about it is it's clever in the way it was made, because at the end of it, that if they didn't want to make any sequels, could have left it there.
Yeah, no,
Could have
okay.
absolutely left it there.
So this was another point that I was going to say. Because they didn't know whether it was going to work yet, it
Hmm.
works, it's beautifully wrapped up within itself. Azkaban or Order of the Phoenix or whatever. You're like, you get to the end and they're like, next time on Harry Potter. And you're like, okay, but I've just sat down for 2.5 hours. Like,
Mm.
and I really like that they're able to sort of encapsulate it. That final line of I'm not going home, not really. Now,
That could end any film.
it could end any film. It is perfect because it is the end of a film. And it's to say, oh, I've found my home and I'm happy.
Yeah.
It can absolutely signal, oh, we're going to be coming back.
Mm.
I'm not going home. I'm going to be coming back here. So stay tuned. Like, get ready, listeners, because I'm on my way back. But I really like that you can sit down and watch it in a sitting and
Mm.
you don't feel like, oh, fuck, well, I've got to watch the next 16 hours of this now because unfortunately I can't. Like,
Yeah.
I can't just put it down here. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. No, it's all magic and vibrant and colorful.
Mm,
I would watch other ones before that, because I just find them a bit more engaging. But if you're going to talk about pure feelings, well, then on to my number two, then,
yeah.
which you've already mentioned, is the Deathly Hallows Part One.
Cool, cool.
It's weird this, because I've clearly done this list wrong, but I think if you were
Right.
to pick one film to be a standalone by itself movie,
Mm-hmm.
this is the best one. But I mean, if you were to take the Harry Potter label off it, and this was just a film about some
Mm.
new people, right?
Some bastard and the Deathly Hallows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then then uh, I don't think they get better than this. It's incredibly grown up. It's very mature in the way it's not made like a traditional fantasy teen film. It's made properly, and it's made really intriguingly. And the key to that is the pace that it goes at. It
Mm,
is absolutely not for people with short attention spans.
no.
And that's not to say that it's too long. It goes at the rate that you would watch a normal film at. It doesn't
It
go at
allows
the
you to take the time that they would feel.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I think there is genuine peril, and I think the reason why I love this one so much is because, as someone who's now, a young adult, the situations I wasn't able to properly conceive in my head when I was watching it first time as a kid in 2011, when I was only
Mm,
8 years old.
that's
It was, yeah,
disgusting.
I know, I do
You
apologize.
disgust me.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But the idea of being in a working in a cafe, and then you turn around and some shit has happened in the cafe while you have been listening to your music or whatever.
I don't think that's the part to focus on.
No, it isn't, but it's all the scenes are like that, and all the scenes you start to deep as an actual person. The
Sure.
idea that Ron gets like split in half as a
Yeah.
character on the way in, and the genuine like that's an unsettling
It's the
scene.
first time they go it on their own, and so
It
you
is,
feel you feel the lack of the institution of
yeah.
Hogwarts
There's
there.
no safety net.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's brilliant. I love all the stuff with the radio, listening to people's names. I love
Mm,
the dynamics. I think it's the best script outright of any of them. I think that
mm,
it's grown up. It's clever. It's believable. Everyone is a character. They're not just an extension of the
mm.
people that they've had to be in the other films. I think they are genuine, interesting people.
Yeah,
Um, I think that it moves in a really interesting way. I think that
hmm
it looks exceptional.
I agree.
um
I think it's
uh
beautifully shot.
it's fantastically shot, and this is what I mean. It's shot like a Roger Deakins film. It's
Right.
all of the stuff with Godric's Hollow,
Mm,
and in the tent, and with the locket and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
It just is fantastic.
it's very
And
pretty.
if I was going to say, if someone asked me what's the best made film, then this is it.
It's that one. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that. I have 2 points.
Go on.
Number one, Bill Nye.
Oh, oh,
Yeah, that's my
oh.
point. Lovely stuff. The second point is I agree. I completely agree. I agree with the pacing of it. I agree with the way that it's shot. I agree with the feeling of peril. I think that all of that is really acute within the film. This is going to sound rogue, but I think when I think about sorry, Deathly Hallows 1 in my mind, I
Mhm.
compare it to, or I assimilate it with, slash put it on the same ladder ranking as, you know, the Quiet Place films.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're watching that film, sure, it's a horror movie. So I'm not saying that they're the same like genre or anything. But when you're
Mhm.
watching that film, it's daylight all the
Mm.
time, or most of the time, and the
Yeah.
sense of danger is still instilled.
Mhm.
You're able to, it's not like, oh, when the lights go out, we all run around. Like it's, the sense of danger is still there,
Mm.
despite the fact that it's broad daylight. We're looking at a mum, a dad, and and a few kids
Mhm.
walking along wherever it is. We're looking at somebody playing a board game, whatever it is, and the sense of danger is just underlying. But
Mm.
it does. We don't have to make it, like they did in the final season of Game of Thrones, like ridiculously dark, and so you can't see anything, and like change the entire color palette to fit that. I
Yeah.
really like that in the first Deathly Hallows, we're just going through the motions of we're in this new place now, or we're in
Mhm.
um Grimmauld Place, or
Mhm.
we're in all of these, some of these places that we've been before and some that we haven't.
Mhm.
Nothing's changed in terms of, oh, everything is dark and dingy now,
Mm.
but there's such a pressure. The stakes are so high,
Mhm.
that we feel in danger anyway, or we feel we've got to keep going anyway. Even like the whole thing in the Ministry of Magic. So when they are the new people for the first time, when they take the polyjuice potion and then they're the ministry workers for the first time, the moment that they start off on their missions, again, that sense of pressure, that sense of stakes comes back in, even though we're watching something in the same environment with the same lighting, with the same color palette
Yeah.
that we were before. And I really like that. I think that's partially due to the script. I think that's partially due to the score. And actually, I think that's due to the acting because they've grown up enough to learn how to
Mm.
act.
Yes.
And I think that that pressure is intrinsic throughout. And the whole bit when Ron kicks off and fucks off,
Yeah, no, that's such a yeah. I mean,
that's
no, you don't know
that's
how this feels. It's.
exactly.
I also think that this film has an emotional clout which is far more devastating than quite a lot of the others because the place it leaps off from is number one, Dumbledore is gone,
Yeah.
and then bless their hearts, the Weasleys try their absolute best to have some light in these dark times and have a wedding, and
Mm,
it's all going swimmingly until it is not.
yeah.
And what I wanted to say about that actually was one of the best bits of any Harry Potter film is in the Half Blood Prince when the Death Eaters attack the Weasleys at their house.
No.
Yes, it so is
So shit.
because that is that is such a precursor for not being able to relax anymore. And the way it's shot is really good and the effects are great. Obviously, I prefer if someone other than Ginny was there, but that's just me. That's just
We've all been
me.
there. We've all been there.
Um, but the point is that it's the wedding feels 10 times worse because oh god, it's all over again now that it's
Yeah,
happened again, and we can't rely on this house anymore,
sure,
which was for the
sure.
first two films
A
just
safe
the
haven.
most joyous,
Mm,
wonderous place,
mm,
and it's
mm.
not anymore.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree with that.
and then you move through the film and then you get to Harry's old house and you get to the
Mm,
place where it happened and you burst through a bedroom wall into a kid's bedroom, which
mm,
as far as I'm working out, that doesn't belong to them, does it? That's part of the house next door, right?
I think that's supposed to be
Or is it
his
supposed to be
room.
his bedroom?
I don't
Well, okay.
fucking know.
I don't know either, but either way, it could just be the room in the house next door, or it
Mm,
could be a weird preservation of his bedroom.
mm,
Either way, the fact that he is having to fight off what he is, part of him,
yeah.
the evil part of him that is in the side of the snake, he's having to
Mm,
fight off that in the room where it all began, I think is brilliant. And you get to the end and you get the body snatchers, which are
hmm.
terrifying. They're so well acted. I forgot who the main bloke is from them, but they're
Yeah.
really creepy.
Yeah,
You
they're
get taken
fantastic.
into the mansion, and just to top this film off, as if it wasn't unnerving enough as an experience, you get the saddest moment in all of Harry
I
Potter.
cry every time. I still cry
It's
every time. I watched it the other
devastating.
day and I cried.
Yep, and it reveals the true genius of Toby Jones and that performance,
Mm.
which is because imagine sitting down in a recording studio and saying, "Give us your finest elf voice," and you go, "Oh, I'm Dobby, and you shouldn't go back to school, Mister Potter," and all this kind of
Mm.
stuff. And then actually, what you do is instead this really kind of earnest but squeaky childish voice, and it
Mm.
just marries
Yeah, I
perfectly. So
agree.
I think
Also,
you and
that's
I. Oh,
any sign. Oh, I was going to say any sign of the previous, like the
yes,
childhood safety.
it's over
That's
now. It's
gone.
gone.
Yeah.
I think you and I both regard this film very highly, Mr. Potter.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a
And
good one.
and and and
Oh,
and
Jesus
just
fuck.
to
Okay.
sorry, just to top off the brilliance of the Deathly Hallows Part One, um, the story of the tale of the three brothers is one of those things where you go, above all else, I appreciate you so much for taking time to do something different here, for
Sure. Yeah.
taking a moment to do some experimenting, because at that point in the film,
Mm-hmm.
they're on the run, and you could argue that they probably don't have time to sit down and tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a story that number one, we need to be told, but number two,
Mm.
is told in a really
Inventively.
inventive way,
Mm.
which feeds into the mindsets of all the characters and
Sure.
feeds acts as a unifying thread for everything that we're about to see. It
Mm.
looks gorgeous. It's narrated wonderfully by Emma Watson. It's
Mm.
also just a genius little self-contained story
Sure.
itself.
Did I tell you
Um,
that I did that for my GCSE drama?
what, the Tale of the Three Brothers?
Yeah, we had to do a devise piece,
And you
which
devised the
we
Tale of the
didn't
Three Brothers?
devise it, but we had to like
Well, obviously not.
that's why I had to buy a morph suit for that because we we had to wear black morph suits. I had to be in look, we had to be shadows, okay? But then also all three of us were like teenagers, okay?
Mm.
Wearing like black morph suits. We were like, oh well, we don't have the body confidence to do this. So
Oh.
then we all had to wear like morph suits, which is supposed to be like shadow-like things. But then we just fucking ruined the illusion by wearing black t-shirts over the top of the morph suits. So all we'd done there is look like shadows with our dad's t-shirts on. Like it was so,
Oh
and then
no, it's the ghosts of Primark. Ah!
literally, and then our teacher was like, "Okay, this is supposed to be about a 20-minute long performance," and we were like, "Great." Don't know if you've ever listened to the Three Brothers. Even when you slow it down, it's 5 minutes long. So genuinely, like we had an audience, like an audience stayed behind after school until like half four, five to come and see our GCSE drama performance. They came in, we did it in morph suits for 5 minutes, and then they left. And we were like, well done, team. Great job.
Oh my god.
And now I do that professionally.
It's gonna say don't mock it, you'll be doing it on tour soon. So I think that the beauty of this is that despite the massively varying order of our lists,
We have the same number one.
we are in union on number one, which is of course it's the Goblet of
It
Fire. Of
is.
course it is.
Now, I do have a bit of a confession here.
Go on.
One of the reasons that I put this first is because I knew that you would likely put this first.
Oh
That does
no.
not mean that I
A
don't agree,
disingenuous
though,
opinion. Okay.
because I watched it the other day. And while previously to know, so if we were going off just my opinion, just my love of Harry Potter, what I like,
Hmm.
number one would be my number one because I
Yeah.
just love it. Because I
Hmm.
think, or of all the reasons I've spoken about previously.
Hmm.
However, if I'm judging a film as a film, narratively, progression wise, acting wise,
Yeah.
um, in terms of the mood setting, cinematography, all that kind of stuff. I do believe that number 4 hits the jackpot. But I also do just think it's an opportunity where we see, like, in the nicest way, just how dumb Harry is. Like, everyone else, like, the point of it is he's up against people, years older than him with much more
Mm.
skill. And we're led to believe, over the past 3 years, Harry has almost single-handedly saved the school, nay, the world, from Voldemort
Yeah.
as like an 11-year-old. And you're
Yeah.
like, okay, it's a bit of a given at this point. And then at this point, he doesn't.
Hmm.
And there's people all around him who are better than him at all of this stuff. And I think that's really nicely shown by the film, by these people, like by the demonstration of the CGI and the things that they're able to do in
Hmm.
comparison to just the sheer pure dumb luck that Harry has. Okay. I think it's a nice moment where we see weakness. But I think that chronologically, as a film, it's very good.
I concur.
Cool.
Quite a long time ago on the blog that I used to write, which is
Yeah,
rest in
what happened to
peace.
that?
What happened to it?
Yeah,
COVID stopped. So,
became a podcast.
yeah, it basically did. It
Mm.
transferred mediums essentially. I think Steve Kloves writes a script which could potentially be really, really difficult because this, obviously, by definition,
Mm.
is the most episodic of the 8 films
Yeah.
because it literally is task, 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 right?
Task one, task two, task three.
Yeah, except each task gets more and more unsettled and unnerving for Harry, right?
Sure.
And eventually the film becomes the subjective view of Harry's inexperience, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
obviously, there's occasional light moments. There's the occasional bit of relief of Victor, I love you, Victor,
Victor,
I
I
do.
do. Yeah.
When we're apart, my heart beats only for you. And what's really interesting about it is that this might be the darkest in terms of lighting of any of the films. The only
What for
contender
the back end of it?
I
Yeah.
think is the Half Blood Prince. I think is the only sort of but if you look
Mm.
at it, the color palette is quite drained and unsaturated.
Mm.
And what I think this is all pointing to is the first big shift in the world, the first
Yeah.
big time that things are not like we are not in Eden. What the hell is going on? We
Sure.
are actually elsewhere. It brings in Brendan Gleeson as Mad
Icon.
Eye Moody, who is historic. Um,
Legend.
and that's where I think stuff that Steve Kloves writes is really impressive because he writes a madman really, really
Mm.
well in all of the scenes, right?
Do
It's
you know what I've just realized?
go on.
In the last time I came on this podcast with you, we were like, oh, well, we can agree about one thing. David Tennant's at the top of
Yeah,
our best actors
I
list.
was gonna talk
And
to this.
then, and then we could be like, oh, we can agree on one thing. The one film that David Tennant
I know.
we're like, that's the best one.
That's the what's the one criminal thing about the Harry Potter series is that they didn't bring back Barty
Tennant.
Crouch Jr.
Mm.
Barty Crouch Jr.
Junior.
There's a scale to this film which I really appreciated. You never really got a sense outside of the Quidditch matches of just how
Oh,
many
Quidditch. Let me get onto that in a second. Carry
okay,
on.
just how many eyes were on the school, right? And I think
Sure.
the introduction of bringing in these two musical, like it opens up the world because right from the beginning, there's two more schools that are introduced
Mm.
from France and Norway, right?
Hmm.
And oh, but side note, it baffled me for years when our friends from the north and then a Bulgarian walked in and I went, excuse me, Bulgaria is not north. And then I was like, oh, he just goes to school in Norway. Um, but it got the BAFTA for production design this
Mm.
because it's
Because it's sick.
glorious. It's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing. All the stuff again with the script with Voldemort coming back, his first words, like the entire scene with him in it is fantastic
Mm.
and it is all underpinned, I think, personally from where I'm sat, with the best score from any of the films.
Interesting. I
I
think the
think
first one has the best score, but
okay, and
carry on.
that's fair enough. And the
Mhm.
reason why that's perfectly fair enough is because none of the rest of them would exist without John
Without
Williams
the
stepping
first
down.
score,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, 100%. But it's the first one that did something new with it. Well, okay, I wasn't thinking solely of that, but that is an unquestionable banger. Um,
Have
No,
you heard that crossed with what?
yes, it's fucking stupid.
Oh, it's
I
brilliant. I
hate it.
love it.
Um, I'm thinking more of literally the opening moments.
Mm.
When the music on the credits is just it's like yeah,
Mm.
kids, you ready to grow up? It's magic, and then it cuts in and it starts in a graveyard, and it starts in this really
Well, I mean, that's
creepy
where the book
way.
starts.
I know, yeah, of course, but
Mm.
it's in this incredibly creepy setting,
Mm.
um, and it's brave and it's bold, and then it doesn't take you to Hogwarts for ages because we've got the Quidditch World Cup to do, and it does a
Mm.
fantastic job of that attack at the Quidditch World Cup final when they're all in the Death Eater's attack is just brilliant. And then I love from there that it's the first time that people start throwing suspicion Harry's way. People start questioning him and going, "How do we know that you're how
Sure.
do we know that you're doing any of this? How do we know that you're telling the truth? How do we know that this is really going on?" And what's so beautiful is that across the whole film, I think, is that Harry, he still doesn't, by the end of it, he still hasn't learned to have the conviction about being honest about the things that he's seen and stuff. Because the fifth film picks up with people still not believing him. And despite his best efforts, the only thing that he can do at the end of this film is shout and scream and cry
Shout at
about
people
it. Yeah. And that
and
he's
unhinged.
still exactly he's still too young
Mm.
to understand that isn't going to be how he gets through to people, and it takes
Mm.
the whole of the fifth film for him to understand that. And I really like that it leaves him sort of in the cold, as it were. It leaves him still vulnerable and
Mm.
inexperienced and scared, and you're meant to leave the film which closes on a sad note. It closes on Cedric's death, followed by a bit of bye-bying outside, but that
Well, I mean, they say from that moment, that everything's going to change
of
now, isn't it?
course,
And you're
yeah.
like, oh, yeah, well, so here we get darker.
Yeah, and that the line of "from now on we will have to make the choice between what is right and what is easy"
Mm.
is
Cheesy, but
cheesy
good.
but good, and
Mm.
and highlights everything perfectly. And then Dumbledore
Sure.
tries to go in and go, "Oh, I burnt these curtains in my fourth year," and Harry's like, "Shut the fuck up."
Yeah.
Um, I just think all the design of all the tasks is fantastic. I think
Hmm.
it's the first one where they can all act. I think
Mm.
its sound design, for one thing, is astonishingly good.
Hmm.
And it brings me on to this sort of final big point I have about Harry Potter, which is that the problem with the overfranchisement of everything is that people forget the individual merits of each franchise. They start looking at franchises and not as the component parts that make them up, right?
Right.
Loads of people, millions upon millions upon millions of people love Star Wars, and all power to them. And that
Sure.
is a franchise that is more than half bad when it comes to the actual films, right? Um,
Yeah.
but the important thing there is not to categorize all of Star Wars,
Mm.
because you have The Empire Strikes Back, and then you have Return of the Jedi. Like, these are not the same things, right? These are that you have the prequels, and then you have the Empire
I'm going to
Strikes
take
Back,
your
like I
word
say.
for it.
But this
Sure.
is what I mean is, like, I think people forget just how commendable the Harry Potter films are. And
Sure.
it sounds stupid because so many millions of people love them,
Mm.
and it's a nerdy thing to be excited about, and you
Yeah.
associate it with being a nerd. And I don't care for that, because if you watch them back, you will see that the effort, the cinematography, the production design, the
Mm.
scores, the costuming, the makeup, the scripting, these are films that were made in a way that completely accomplished absolutely everything they were hoping to translate across.
Hmm.
And that is not easy.
No.
And Marvel is proving that is not easy. Star Wars proved that is not easy. The
Sure.
Hobbit proved that is not easy. And this is a set of 8 films, and that's a
Mm.
lot of films, right?
Yeah.
Fast and Furious has 10 films.
Right. There are too many Fasts and Furious. I said this the
Of
last
course
time I
there are.
was
Of course
here.
there are.
We've been fast. We've been furious.
Listen, but that's what I mean. Is like, that's, as a franchise, ridiculous, and it's giving franchise a bad name, right? There
Mm.
are so many Saw films, only I think 3 of which are any good, right?
Again, we've used a saw.
We've used a
We've been
Saw.
there.
We've had Halloween loads of times.
Mm.
It's dead now. It's dead now.
We've seen some paranormal activity.
Yeah,
We don't need to see any more.
and once was enough. I
Mm-hmm.
think, for Paranormal Activity. Once we went,
Oh,
yeah,
I wouldn't
good.
know. I don't engage.
Oh, the first one went, yeah, good. And then from then on, we went, well, we're still doing this, aren't we?
But you were making a point.
I was making a point, and the
You were making
point
a point.
the point is that as far as franchises go,
Mm.
this Harry Potter deserves unbelievable amounts of credit
Yeah.
for making the none of those films are without merit, and
Yeah, I
they
agree.
all
I
have
agree.
significant strengths. And I think it's important to look at them like that and not just see them as Harry Potter films, because
Yeah, absolutely.
once you accept that there is wizardry, there are spells, there is magic, and
Yeah.
they're in a big castle. Once you accept all that, which is the point of the first film to get you into the world and enjoy it.
Mm.
Once you accept all that, there is a lot of very, very clever stuff going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that that should be forgotten about.
What I would say to back that up, I completely agree, is that actually what you're watching already had such an enormous fan base. The reason that Harry Potter was such a big thing from the get-go is
Mhm.
because people already loved the books, right?
Yeah.
From when they started to make number one, they already loved the books that were out. It was already a big thing. It was like when they started to make Thrones, like there was
Mhm.
always already a big fan base behind Thrones before they then started to make them into TV series. Actually, to be able to produce films to that standard with the people that they had, with the um creation that they managed at the end of it,
Mhm.
and to have people still love them and esteem them as much as they do, that's an enormous feat. People talk about it today and they say, I love Harry Potter. And
Mhm.
they go, books or films? And you go, both. And
Mhm.
that's actually a really hard thing to do. And the story is the same and it works cohesively. I do think that as much as it's a franchise, sure, I think it's been enfranchised by the film industry, and I don't love all of that. I think that
Mhm.
sometimes you should just be able to have something as it doesn't really have to be a capitalist franchise, but hey,
Mhm.
that's getting onto my politics. But I do think that as a story, they have done it beautifully from
Yeah.
start to finish. There are bits that I don't like. I fucking hate the vignette, but I think from start to finish, what they've done is they've told a gorgeous story. And like you say, there's no film that I don't like.
Yeah. Et two, sister.
Mm,
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I think I struggle to think of what would be the thing to have quite as much impact as this would. Also, it's just so damn cool, man. Like, imagine just being able to pick up a wand and just do spells and shit.
yeah. Well,
Dude.
that's why people like it. They're like, oh, imagine if I could do that. That'd be so
Mhm.
sick. Yeah.
And also, yeah, it's the engaging factor of it though. It's the fact that you think about what house you would be sorted
Oh,
into,
yeah. What
what you
would you
think
be?
about them to do. I'm through and through blue-blooded Ravenclaw.
Interesting, because apparently I'm a Ravenclaw, but every time I do the test, it's like
Really?
50-50, Gryffindor or Ravenclaw. What do you want to
Mm.
be? And I'm like, I want to be financially stable, but you can't offer me that right now. So,
Well, my big like dream as a kid would
mm,
be to be competing alongside the other four in the Goblet of Fire. But in my head, I had a blue and black checkered like quarters jersey for the final task because I
yeah.
think that would look so fucking sick. Um,
Mm,
and yeah, it carries a weight to there's it's like Bond.
sure.
There's an institutional brilliance about
Oh,
being in
yeah.
Harry Potter,
I just
and
love that in the books, when you read like the first book, they're like, and Slytherin is a place for the really ambitious people, and
yeah,
Ravenclaw is a place for the really clever people, and Gryffindor is a place for the really brave people, and Hufflepuff, yeah, they're too,
that's
you
for
know,
everyone else. Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
there as well.
Literally is the Lib Dems.
Yeah.
So that's been a comprehensive discussion.
How's it?
It has, and it's now 2 hours
I know.
that we've been
It's
recording
horrific.
for.
Thank God I ate before. I was going to hold off
Yeah,
on dinner until I'd
that
finished
would have
this.
been a
Can you
terrible
imagine?
idea. Okay,
God,
I
I'd have
know.
been cooking in the kitchen and woken half my flatmates up.
Okay, so just as a final thing to do, then, will you please run us down for the final time your number 8 to number 1 in order,
Oh,
please?
fuck off. I can't remember.
Of course you can. Of
What have
course you
I
can.
said?
Verity, you wrote it down
I
in
changed it so
front
many
of you.
times.
Do
Okay,
it again. I will try and keep you right.
so I think number six was last for me.
Let's do it
Sorry, I think
like
the
a normal
Half-Blood
list.
Prince
There we go.
was last for me.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, I have changed my mind since writing this list, so this no longer applies,
Okay,
but we're
but
going to go through it
listen,
anyway.
any list on any different day
It
could
changes.
it's
Yeah, sure,
yeah.
sure. So today, the one that I made up in the 5 seconds that you gave me is the following.
Okay.
The Half-Blood Prince.
Yeah.
No, that's a lie. Yes, the
No, that
Half-Blood
isn't.
Prince is last.
Okay. Number 7.
I mean, I disagree with that statement, but let's go forward.
Okay.
N the s- the seventh
Fucking me.
pick.
Jesus Christ. I know we weren't prepared for this, but I was expecting that by the end, when
No,
we'd
I'm
done
just
the
finding it
list,
really difficult to be like number seven is number two. Like
when
I
we'd done the no, but just why don't you just call them the names of the film?
because in
That
my head
might help.
anyway, right, right. Anyway, sorry, you're
Did you pick
listening.
up a book that said Harry Potter 2?
Oh,
No, you
no,
didn't. You picked up a book that
look,
said Harry
your
Potter, the
one
Chamber of Secrets.
Brazilian listener is probably really bored right now. So, okay, the last one, number eight on my list is the
Mhm.
Half-Blood Prince.
Okay.
Number seven on my list is the Chamber of Secrets.
Yes.
Yeah, number.
That is what it's called, yeah.
I can't remember that's number seven. Number six on my list is the the Deathly Hallows Part Two.
It was, yes.
Number
5.
five on my list was The Order of the Phoenix.
Correct.
Number four on my list was The Prisoner of Azkaban.
Yes.
Number number three on my
Oh my
list
God.
was Deathly Hallows Part One.
God, I'd be better off doing this with Mr. Blobby.
Blubber, blubber, blubber. And number two on my list was the
Philosopher's
Philosopher's
Stone.
Stone,
Mhm.
and then number one on my list was the order. No, the
Goblet of Fire.
Goblet of
Fucking hell.
Fire. But can I just say to all the listeners, hi listeners, I'm so sorry that you've had to listen to my voice for the last like hour and a half. Um, I disagree with all of that I've just said. I changed
So
my
I hope
mind.
you've enjoyed this to waste of fucking time.
It really changed my mind. A lot of that was a lie, but number one is my favorite Harry Potter film, and that's what I'll put on whenever I want a packet of biscuits on a sick day.
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming.
Cease and observe, sister. This is how it's done, right?
Oh, just fuck
Uh,
off.
Number 8 is the Chamber of Secrets.
Okay.
Number 7 is the Philosopher's Stone because I'm an old man, even though I love it. Number 6 is the Order of the Phoenix. Number 5 is the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Number 4 is the Half Blood Prince. Number 3 is the Prisoner of Azkaban. Number 2 is the Deathly Hallows Part 1. And number 1 is the Goblet of Fire.
Hmm. Do you ever wonder that, like, do you ever worry that your like seven listeners don't really give a shit about this?
It concerns me every day that I'm shouting into the void right now. But listen,
Because
eventually,
don't get me wrong, I love you, but I also haven't listened to all of these.
some people, but the thing is, Verity, if my own family aren't going to listen to all of these. Anyway, on that cheery note, it's time to end. Those have been our rambling and unprepared thoughts on the Harry Potter series.
Mhm.
But
Can I
I
come back? This is
think
fun.
of course you can come back so long as you well, number one, I'll give you more warning.
Thank
Uh,
you. I'll prepare
number
something next time.
Yeah, number two, maybe remember the films that you're gonna talk about.
Look, I know them all inside out,
We all
but
know them all, but
I
you
just couldn't remember the order in which I talked about them because not only did we not talk about them in the order that I wrote them down, but then I changed that order.
yeah, you did.
It
Yeah,
was
you did.
useless to everyone.
Yeah, you did. Okay. In which
Cool.
case, we will finish it there, and I will say thank you very much to my sister Verity for joining us at short notice.
Oh, well, I'm glad I can be option three.
Well, you better up your game next time if you want to be option one. I'm
Right.
joking. I'm
Right.
joking.
God.
It's always nice to have a chat, and also this was, in fairness to you, this was meant to happen on our holiday, but we didn't actually find any time. So, in
Yeah.
fairness, this isn't you genuinely being choice number 3. It's just catching up on what I wanted to do a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, that's
So
kind.
there you go.
Bullshit, but kind.
um yes, thank you very much for listening. If you do have feedback or suggestions or whatever you want to hear, just let me know. It's always nice to when people come and talk to me about it, and I will hopefully be seeing you again very soon with something else. So thank you very much, and bye.